This Sunday's gospel is a very familiar story, a spuriously familiar story for millions of American Catholics. But shockingly, it takes on a very different orientation when placed respectfully into its Mediterranean cultural context. Matthew chapter 16, verses 13 through 20. Jesus went into the region of Caesarea Philippi, and he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the sky-vault man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Dipper, others Elijah, still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you all say that I am?" Simon Peter said in reply, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus said to him in reply, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my sky-vault patron. And so I say to you, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my assembly, and the gates of the netherworld shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of Sky-vault. Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in Sky-vault, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in Sky-vault." Then he strictly ordered his disciples to tell no one that he was the Christ. Americans are recognized as the most individualistic people who have ever lived. Each one of us strives to be distinct, unrepeatable. In the United States, every one of us has a personal social security number and many other distinctive and singular identities. We like to personalize all our stuff. Mediterranean people, though, are exactly the opposite. This is especially true 2,000 years ago. Experts describe them as dyadic personalities. The word dyad means pair. Such people are other-oriented or group-oriented to such an extent that they have no sense of their individuality, but depend rather on the opinions of other people to help them know who they are. So Jesus' question is not a theology quiz for his disciples. Instead, it reflects a normal Mediterranean curiosity by Jesus, a dyadic personality, about what other people think about him. Like everyone else in this culture, Jesus needs such feedback because he does not know who he is. And he's trying to learn this from significant others in his life. So he asks the members of his faction, the members of his group self, to tell him. In Jesus' case, the question is particularly interesting because the normal stereotyping of that culture was not working. Jesus' enemies feel satisfied in knowing him as Jesus of Nazareth, a nothing person. To know a person's home village in this cultural world, the cultural world of the Bible, is to know everything about him. All people in Nazareth were presumed, stereotyped to be alike. Remember in the Gospel of John, Nathanael? Nathanael's rhetorical question, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" simply echoes the commonly held stereotypical image of that village's inhabitants. Worthless people, no good people, nothing people from a nothing place. Lowlifes. Another stereotypical identification of Jesus is the artisan's son. The ancient wisdom observed, like father, like son. The idea was that to know a family was to know everything about every member of that family. Is not his mother called Mary? And are not his brothers James and Joseph and Simon and Judas? And are not all his sisters with us? Where then did this man get all this? And they took offense at Jesus. One of the reasons for the offense was that Jesus was not engaged in the same profession as Joseph, so he was not a dutiful and respectful son, you see? And Jesus knew very well all these stereotypical identities that belonged to him. The Gospels are polished accounts. They don't go into detail or explain all of the embarrassing things that happened to Jesus and his followers. Like having to beg for food all the time, and getting thrown out of villages, and getting beaten. After the 15th or 25th or 30th time they got beaten and their clocks cleaned, you'd have to think that Jesus and his followers would start wondering if the mystical experiences they're having, the alternate states of consciousness experiences they're having, were really from the God of Israel, or maybe could they be being tricked by mischievous or malevolent spirits? Wasn't Jesus accused of that? Accused of being possessed? Having a demon? That's in the tradition too, folks. So Jesus asks his in-group for their opinion. True to Mediterranean form, Jesus' disciples tell him what other people are saying about him and how other people are perceiving him. He's perceived to be like John the Baptist, Elijah, Jeremiah, another of the prophets. Now listen, hey, these answers are great. They're all honorable, but they're all mistaken perceptions too. Jesus then presses his in-group for their opinion. Who do you, plural, say that I am? Simon is the mouthpiece of the entire group. He responds, the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Now Jesus has a rather large assortment of opinions to ponder. John the Baptist, Elijah, Jeremiah or another prophet, or the Messiah. By the way, let me take this opportunity to explain that there is no big theological messianic secret to be found in this gospel or in Mark or any other gospel. As Dr. John Pilch says, the so-called messianic secret of Mark, which Matthew also uses, has been overplayed by exegetes and theologians. There is no messianic secret. When Jesus orders his followers not to tell anyone, that's just culturally normal secrecy and deception most common to the circum-Mediterranean and Middle Eastern social worlds. You can find it all over the Gospels if you know where to look. In the cultural world of the Bible, you don't owe strangers and outsiders the truth, and the historical Jesus most definitely lived by that understanding. But wait a minute. The Johannine Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life. Yeah, for insiders, not outsiders. So Jesus has been given by his followers 4 answers, all honorable, but only one is correct. So let the outsiders be fooled with these wrong but honorable answers. Hey, Jesus never claimed to be any of these answers. Keep them guessing, Jesus. And what happens if one of Jesus' followers gets really stupid and leaks the correct answer? We're looking at you, Judas. Well, in that case, they still have to juggle with the other incorrect but honorable answers. See? He is grateful to Simon for this information, and so Jesus bestows on Simon a nickname, Rocky or Peter. New nicknames were regularly given at significant moments in a group's life, especially to the more prominent members. Rocky has played the role of a moral entrepreneur throughout the gospel called Matthew, supporting Jesus' career from the day he answered his call and prodding it along at every opportunity. Later on, Peter's associates James and John would prod their mother to obtain a favor for them from Jesus so that they might outstrip Peter and his new nickname. In addition, Jesus promises that Peter will become like him, a shamanic broker who can provide access to the God of Israel, the patron. This is the significance of giving Peter the keys of the kingdom. See, Jesus is like Tom Hagen in The Godfather, and God is like the Godfather, the Don Vito Corleone. Tom Hagen grants others access to the Don, to the patron. And Peter is promised by Jesus to have this broker's specialty. That's why he's given the keys of the kingdom, because keys open doors, which is another way of describing a broker's specialty. Over and beyond that, Peter is given a distinctive power to declare authoritative judgments, binding and loosing, something which appears to have been given to all the disciples in Matthew chapter 18, verse 18. Okay now, given all this information, if American believers read Jesus' questions here in Matthew chapter 16 from our intense, psychologically introspective perspective that dominates modern American convictions about self-knowledge and knowledge of others, then they will assume that Jesus knows who he is and that he is testing his friends to see if they know who he is. This is an ethnocentric to American values reading. However, if instead they use this Mediterranean scenario I've just laid out and read Matthew chapter 16 through it, then they will have to assume that Jesus does not know who he is and looks to significant others in his life in order to find out. The question is, how will you read this passage?